There we go. People are starting to load up. Good morning, everyone from the US. Good afternoon, evening over in Dubai, the Middle East, and India, maybe the UK, maybe Australia, maybe New Zealand, wherever you are. Good day to you. See some good friends up on the board here on the attendee list. Always good to see. If you can raise your hand very quickly just to make sure you can hear me. Can you raise your hand on the control panel? Make sure you hear me. Nobody's raising their hand. Oh, there we go. Good. Got people that can hear us. Fabulous. I will start in about 1 minute. Let people load up. As the sun rises in the east coast of the USA, looks like it's going to go down soon in Dubai, probably. Love the suspense with the timer here, Abby. That's awesome. Looking for the music to start going. The fanfare. Good stuff. You're muted there, Abby. You're muted. Let's see. Where are you muted? Rich is muted. Abby's not muted. I'm going to click you on and off on the mute, and let's see what happens. Try now. I'm not hearing anything from you, Abby. You were just here a second ago.
Can you hear me, Bill?
Yeah, loud and clear. Abby, check your control panel and go to audio. Make sure it says computer.
Hear me now?
Yep, got you now.
Is that better? Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that was the drum roll, right?
There you go. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and I'm turning it over to Abby because you're driving the bus today. Go for it, Abby.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very, very excited to host this today. A big warm welcome to each and every one. I just want to be sure that you have seen the user interface. This is a bit different. The GoToWebinar, somewhere around in your panel, you would have a chat button as well as a questions panel as well. And as we go through today's session, I would definitely welcome each one of you to use the chat in case you want to introduce yourself or talk about yourself, let yourself known to others. And of course, please feel free to put in some questions, anything that you think is related to pacifier protection or compliance or codes. You can try us with the most difficult ones, and I can assure you we will pick only the easy ones. The difficult ones we will reply probably in emails. So I hope all that is good and the user interface is okay. Would love to see a chat, just a test message from somebody to be sure that you can use this. And I want to welcome everyone to this series that is happening for the first time. This is a 5-part series where us as an association aim to bring out all the good that we have already done in passive fire protection and invite ideas and members and more energy from all the audience and people around the world who can join this movement that we have been around for a quarter of a century, and we intend to make this movement bigger and bigger. We are probably the only passive fire protection association which is as global as we are. All the tools, systems that we have worked on, which we will be talking about today, have had a very, very welcoming acceptance in many parts of the world. It has been added on to building codes across several countries. And these tools are so helpful in dividing as well as mitigating risks, reducing liabilities, increasing assurance, that they have been readily picked up by industry groups, specifically across the world in healthcare, hospitality, and several other sectors. Massive benefit in having some of these systems in place because they work and they have been helping all the people around. So I'm going to introduce a little bit about the association and a bit of background regarding passive fire protection. And after that, I'm going to hand over to Bill and Rich, who are going to run us through a little more about some of the tools, some of the systems that the association have been working on. And towards the end, when we have an open discussion, is when we will scroll through the questions that you have shared. And if we find a question very, very interesting, a good burning question, we'll try to hand over the mic to you, and we would love to kind of have the question heard from you so that we can provide the benefit of answering those burning questions, if I can call them so, for the benefit of all the people who have logged in, who are listening in. Throughout the course of the session, I will also be taking breaks by opening some poll questions, and it would be very nice to get a feedback for some of the poll questions that we have designed in order to understand who are you, where you come from, as well as check how much are you understanding about what we are talking about. So we are a very typical industry association, probably very, very global, as I mentioned, within the passive fire protection space. Here is a quick definition from Wikipedia, and I realized that we fit in to almost everything that an association would typically stand for. So I'm very excited to say that we are very much, we tick kind of all the boxes of what associations are supposed to do. And we've been around for 25 years, as I said, quarter of a century. So very quickly, who we are an international association of specialty firestop and passive fire protection contractors, special inspection agencies, manufacturers, distributors, and more, dedicated to the consistent design, installation, inspection, and maintenance of firestop systems and effective compartmentation barriers, all essential to the components of passive fire protection. And I'm deliberately taking time to read all of this just to make sure that I emphasize that it is one good big family where people from all over the world are aligned with the goal of driving fire safety across their jurisdictions, countries, and wherever they operate. Our members are companies that provide services and products to Firestop, fire and smoke resistance rated and effective compartmentation industries. And through active participation and activations like this session, and a whole raft of other forums and platforms where we engage, our members are able to contribute to the advancement of Firestop and effective compartmentation and maintain exceptional knowledge of this very, very specialized trade that has been enhancing fire safety all over the world. Our members are global experts and providers of life safety, passive fire, and smoke protection. I'm very excited to share that since 1995, our goals have been and continue to be focused on building the reliability of installed Firestop systems through the DIIM, which we will talk about today. What is DIIM? As well as focusing on the building of Firestop and effective compartmentation industry through advocacy, education, and membership. Now, before I move, I would like to take a quick dipstick of who all are here. I would really want you to start answering some of the questions. It'll just take you a minute or maybe less, and it would be good to know and understand who all are there in the audience as I continue towards the next slide where I talk further. It's great to see the answers. It's great to see a good mix of all the members who are there in the audience, all the people who are related to the passive fire protection industry are here. So good to see the responses coming in. Please go ahead, and whoever has not been in, I'd love you to give the answers. All right, closing the poll in 10, 9. Perfect. Great to get the answers. Thank you so very much. I continue to share that how excited I am to be part of this body that has been able to drive changes almost from the get-go. You know, we started in 1999, and very quickly we were able to design and implement some of the tools like the FM 4991 standard and the contractor qualification program, which we will talk about, as well as launch the Life Safety Digest, which till now and continues to be a great resource for everybody ranging from specialist consultants, contractors, manufacturers, code consultants, fire authorities, as a great resource for learning, education, and almost all the articles that have been published in the 20+ years, almost all of them continue to have relevance even till date. So I'm very excited to be part of this really growing body and association, and don't mind the map because it does miss out some of the dots from India and some of the other countries where we have added members in the recent times. Our members focus on some of these categories, and I'll quickly jump from here to talking to you about passive fire protection. And at the end of that, I have a small poll again. So please bear with me in imagining what I'm going to ask all of you to imagine. I want you to think along with me and look around and see where you are, just so that we can start imagining and understanding what is passive fire protection. What constitutes passive fire protection? Maybe you are sitting in your home or an office or a commercial building. Look around you. Look at how the compartment around you has been created. Can you imagine or see the walls around you? What are the openings? Some pictures on your screen for you to understand and imagine this. But for the purpose of imagination, just think if a fire breaks out in any of these areas, how will that fire get compartmentalized, suffocated, enclosed, and where can that happen? This is the primary genesis of containment or passive fire protection. And there are numerous materials, products, systems that create, build, maintain this containment. Some of these are here on your screen, and these are primarily, it is not an exhaustive list, but these are primarily the systems that bring about the containment or the motive of passive fire protection, which means that this is the first line of defense. This can contain the fire even before the sprinklers and smoke detectors are going to function in other parts of the zone or the containment area where the fire could have initiated. It means if passive fire protection has been correctly designed, correctly installed, correctly inspected, correctly maintained, then if there is a fire incident, that incident can be contained as an incident and it will not become an accident. And you will not have all the sprinklers kicking in, all the smoke detectors kicking in. No, it will be contained within the room or the floor where the fire has initiated. And very similar to this is structural fire protection. And in structural fire protection, we make sure that the structure is able to maintain its structural integrity despite having to face a fire. Probably this is known well to people that structural steel typically is able to maintain its structural integrity in maybe, I don't know, 500 to 700 degrees Celsius. But with structural fire protection or intumescent fire protection, we are able to enhance this structural integrity for a fairly long time. So before I delve a little more into the complexity and I look through some of the questions that have been starting to come in, may I just ask the audience to just quickly give a click of button and say, where is everyone? How often do people really face or use passive fire protection? It's good to see that I am already getting some questions, and that's very nice. Love to hear other questions which we could answer towards the end of this session. It's good to see there are people who use or understand passive fire protection for less than all the time, because these are the people we would love to talk about and share more about passive fire protection with all of you. I just give it a few more seconds before I move on to the next slide to touch upon how typically passive fire protection gets implemented in buildings. You know, there are a long list of stakeholders when any infrastructure, any occupancy type is conceptualized, designed, delivered, and maintained. And the starting point, typically here, the starting point is what we call the fire and life safety plan. So Probably you have seen a fire and life safety plan, but typically this is what is one of the outcomes of a fire and life safety plan. It will define where all containment is required, how much containment has been designed. And that's a great starting point for a lot of type of businesses to come in action. There are people who are producing materials, products, systems, and spending considerable time, effort, energy to prove that all of these systems, products, materials can fulfill the requirements of the fire and life safety plan. These products and materials can be correctly designed so that what was originally thought of in the plan to ensure that fire and life safety will be maintained can be maintained. So there is a lot in this space. And once all of this is correctly done and the building changes hands from contractors to occupiers is when maintenance comes in. Here is a quick snapshot from the Joint Commission, which is a very global accreditation body within the healthcare industry, who talks about the requirements of maintenance and inspection. The JCI requires annual inspection report of all passive fire protection installation, which means what was designed in the fire and life safety plan, what was built now has to function and showcase that it is continuing to work for making sure that fire and life safety is maintained all across. So sometimes all of this can be very, very complex. And in order to bring sanity to all of this complexity, this is where FCIA as an association have been spending a lot of time, a lot of effort in solving some of these issues, some of these challenges by bringing about various standards. I'm going to move and hand over the mic to Bill after this slide and allow him to introduce some of the key tools and the DIIM model of FCIA that has been providing the basis to the industry and users everywhere in the world to make sure passive fire protection is designed and delivered correctly. Over to you.
Thank you, Abhi.
Are you around?
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Really appreciate it. Had an echo just for a second. Hopefully it's gone. Good. So let's talk a bit about the DIIM. I mean, this is really an industry story, if you think about it. This industry story discussion actually started long before the FCIA was formed in 1998 and 99. Rich Walke and I attended and spoke at a Construction Specifications Institute conference. It was a chapter meeting, actually, downtown Chicago, and we brought together the whole passive fire protection industry, as much of it as we could gather in a short time for an evening presentation about fire resistance in buildings and passive fire protection. And we actually talked about this, but we didn't name it, the DIIM. We did not name the proper design, installation, inspection, and maintaining protection at the time. We just asked the questions. How come there isn't something that separates the contractors that really get what fire stopping is from those that don't? Why don't we have inspection like there is in fireproofing, for instance? Why don't we maintain protection of existing buildings? I mean, this is an industry story. It started 1994, actually. And then when the association formed in 1998, at that time, I was actually a contractor. trying to buy a good-sized contracting company. And I was a founding member along with 7 or 8 others, and we sat around a table and asked these same questions. Why isn't there good, strong specifications, code requirements, standards? Why isn't there an installation program that separates the contractors that get it from those that don't? Why isn't there inspection? How come we don't have a book or a knowledge base to teach from? What about getting involved in codes and working with specifiers to really make this industry such that the products made by the manufacturers actually get installed the way they were supposed to be? How do we complete that circle? And that's where this proper design, installation, inspection, and maintaining protection philosophy, the trademarked DIIM, came from. And the FCIA has really championed all of the above to try and find a way to increase the reliability of the installed Firestop system. That was our objective from the start. How do we do that? We first have to associate. That's the derivative of the word association. We associate with people of the common interest, common ideas, common thoughts. We have to build that group of people. So it started in June of 1998 with 7 or 8 of us. In January of 1999, after a phone call to Rich Walke, who was at UL at the time, said, "Hey, Rich, can you get us a conference room and a tour?" He said, "Sure." Next thing you know, we're in the darn headquarters at UL Laboratories, at Reyes Laboratories up in the Chicago area, Chicago, Illinois, USA area, center of the country, and had a couple of day program to get a group to associate and then talk to them about the goals of where the association would go. And it resulted in the DIIM. That day, we broke into committee meetings after having discussion about the same questions that Rich and I talked about in 94, that we talked about again in 98. January of 1999 in Chicago, it's cold, -2 Fahrenheit. Celsius, that's got to be a whole bunch under in the minus column. And we talked about, why don't we have a body of knowledge, which became a technical committee that built the FCIA Firestop Manual of Practice? Why don't we have some kind of accreditation program? We had no idea what that was going to be until we started working as an accreditation committee, which was formed right then and there. Technical committee, accreditation committee, both formed at that time. How are we going to talk to the code officials? We formed a liaison marketing committee to talk to code officials and specifiers about our industry and these programs we're going to develop. The standards committee actually didn't really hop in until probably 2000, later in 99 actually. And we'll talk about how that came together in probably the next slide. So let's hop on to the next thing there, Abhi. The next slide, and off we'll go. So let's talk about the D design first. Once we have these programs, and I'll talk about the IIM, all 3 of those, the IIM, we should actually be talking about IIM first and then D. So we call it IIM instead of DIIM, at least this morning. But the D is a whole bunch of things. Certainly it's about construction documents, and that's what the specifier does. That's their job. The architect's job is to take what is written in the building codes, regardless of where they are in the world, take what's written in those building codes and communicate it through the construction documents to the contractors, the general contractor and the Firestop specialist contractor as well. That's their job. How are they going to do that? They have to understand what's going on in the industry and communicate what they think is the right thing to do. And that's where we worked with the specifiers to make sure that they have the proper 078400 specification. We also work with the code officials. Rich and I, in a couple of weeks, will be in Long Beach, California for a period of about almost 2 weeks, actually, to present about passive fire protection just as we are today. And after we're done doing that and have an expo to talk about some of the code issues, we'll be at the code hearings discussing what the 2027 version of the International Building Code will look like in Chapter 7 on fire resistance. So the code officials, they get some of the D design, the specifiers D design. One organization that I don't have in here is the manufacturers. They have to go to a fire test laboratory with products they've designed, systems that they've designed, and fire test them to make sure they work when called upon by fire. So there's a lot wrapped up into just D. There's a ton there, actually. Rich, you got any thoughts on the D before I jump into I on the installation? Uh-oh. Got you muted there. While Rich is unmuted. Okay, there you go.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you. Yeah, let me just start by saying that my involvement in fire stopping goes back to 1987 when I was working for UL. I was heading up the fire stopping group at that point in time at UL, and fire stopping was really in its infancy. The I component of DIIM didn't really exist, nor did the inspection component, nor did the maintenance component. We had a few aspects of the D in place. We did have test standards in place at that point in time by which UL would conduct fire tests and establish tested listed systems. There were some very primitive specifications in place, and a couple of the manufacturers were involved in code development, trying to put together code requirements here in the US for fire stopping, but it was all very disjointed at that point in time. There wasn't call it a trade association that was representing the Firestop community. It was the Firestop section of the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. And but the problem is they were part of a much bigger organization that was primarily focused on the electrical aspects. So they didn't care about protecting, you know, plastic pipes, metal pipes. All they cared about was conduit and cables. So the relationship with NEMA really didn't do well. So there was no really coordinated effort to bring about improvement. And my early days of fire stopping, the biggest story was improper installation. You know, contractors not installing the products properly, either for lack of knowledge or whatever. And but there was no true effort to improve upon that. So there was another organization that represented the manufacturers, so they got involved in things that were more manufacturing orientated, but nothing that really represented the contractors. And that's where Bill McHugh and the Firestop Contractors International Association came about, in forming an association that represented the contractors. And in a very short time, the group made tremendous progress in moving this industry forward on all aspects. So
thanks, Rich. And then while we were with Rich in 1999 at his headquarters, our group really came up with the idea on how do we build a program to differentiate the contractor. That was a big part of the discussions. At that time, I knew that FM Approvals was working on a program for quality management systems in other industries. So I immediately reached out on behalf of the committee to FM Approvals, and we got a meeting laid out in winter of 1999. No, actually, we didn't do it till spring of 99, because we brought in FM Approvals and UL to talk about, and one other organization, to talk about accreditation programs at the next conference, which was in March of that year, where, of course, Las Vegas in the USA. Where else do contractors want to meet? So we went to Las Vegas and had another great meeting, and a committee of the whole. There were actually, like, I don't know, 60, 80 people in the room. We all chose that we would work with FM approvals, hire them to start the FM 4991 program. So it was actually the accreditation committee, the FCIA accreditation committee, that reached out to FM approvals, UL, one other group, to build the first program, the FM 4991. And once we had that program started, it resulted in the body of knowledge having to get published fast, because we administered the first exams for the FM 4991 in November of 2000. So think about it. This is March of 99. In November of 2000, we rolled out a whole program for management system, approved standard FM 4991, standard for the approval of Firestop contractors. We kept on working with UL, wasn't quite ready for us at the time. Rich gave us the right contacts and we worked with them, but that department wasn't quite ready yet. It took till about 2004 before we started those conversations with UL and built the UL qualified contractor program. So this program, to improve the installed quality of Firestop installations, build a culture of zero tolerance, as you've got here in the slide there, Abhi. This actually took place in a pretty quick time. Formed the association in 1999, launched FM 4991 in 2000, and then UL qualified Firestop contractor program, first exams in Montreal in 2006. Program launched in 2007. Now we've got like 200 and some odd contractors around the world that have gone through this to build that zero tolerance quality of Firestop contractors, the culture of their company, to make it quality. The manufacturers spend millions on their ISO 9000 programs. We got to make sure the contractors spend time on their own quality process to make it work. And then the question that was asked in November of 2000, hey, Bill, what are you guys going to do with this FM 4991 thing? I said, well, first we're going to work with the specifiers and see if they like it. And then we'll go to the code hearings and see if the code culture likes it. The specifiers bought into it big time. In Dubai, you saw it in the Burj Khalifa tower. The FM 4991 was specified in the Burj Khalifa. How did it get there? My friend at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, the specifier who we had spoken to, said, hey, Bill, we're having a meeting with all our specifiers from San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Paris, wherever the heck else they are. Come on in, let's talk about fire stopping. So sure enough, here I am sitting with the leaders at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill that designed the Burj Khalifa, that designed the Sears Tower in Chicago, which is now called the Willis Tower, I think, or something else, who knows. But the story is we got at it and got to the specifiers and talked to them about the DI. Then at the same time, we're talking 2000 spring at, 2000 fall, I think it was. Spring or 99, between the 99-2000 timeframe, we had a guy named Mike Pfeiffer come talk to us from the International Code Council. He was the vice president of code development, actually, senior vice president at ICC. And we talked to him about our installation of the IIM, and we also talked to him about the I inspection, and asked him the question, how do we get inspection into the building codes? How come it's not there already? We asked Mike. And Mike he's a pretty cool guy and shot right back, hey, do you have a standard? And did you guys come to the code process and put it in? Because, building codes, just like governance, is the responsibility of the people that are in the country, the people in the industry. It's the responsibility of the industry to build what they think is the right program, bring it to government and say, this is the regulation we think we need. And that's really how it all came together. We immediately formed a standards committee. FCIA did, hired a consultant to write the first draft of ASTM E2174, standard for the inspection and penetration fire stops. Published in 2001, we then took it right to the codes and tried to get it as adopted by the International Building Code 2003 version. We weren't successful until 2009's code hearings for the 2012 International Building Code of the USA. the 2393 standard didn't get published, the standard for joints, until 2004. But this whole thing wouldn't have started. That's the other eye. Wouldn't have started if the FCIA members didn't say, "Hey, how come we don't have inspection?" Well, guess what? We have it now. Go ahead, Abhi. Sorry.
So I'm going to just quickly jump in and just launch a quick poll from the audience. And before I welcome you back, Bill and Rich, to walk the audience through how such a set of efforts that you have all done, and the members and all the hands that came together have been able to create so many systems, standards, procedures, and the manual of practice, of course, which embodies all of this learning, and how they have been adopted across the world. And as a almost as a picture to the new members and the future members, to say, here is a association, here is a body which already has been able to progress and create some of these tools which are being adopted, which can be adopted very, very easily, because a lot of the work now has evolved to be standard agnostic and code agnostic, which means our friends who signed in from the UK, Europe, people who are listening in from India, from Asia, from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, they are very familiar with the fact that even if they work on other standards, they use the British standards, they use the European norm, they use ISO, they use Indian standards, the DIIM philosophy, the DIIM platform can provide them an easily adoptable method so that there is a global harmonization in the language of passive fire protection, installation, maintenance, and the trust on passive fire protection starts to increase more and more and more globally. So I'll kind of pass it back to you. I have the response of the poll questions. I let the audience just punch in the answers. It's a great kind of group that we have. We have designers. I'm just bringing this up on the screen. I don't know if you can see this as well. We have designers, installers, inspectors who are all part of the audience. And I just nudge everyone else to just punch in the answers if you have not answered before. Bill, you can go ahead and talk a little bit more about design. Can I move to the next slide?
Please do. I'm seeing the poll still. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so we've talked about D-Design, and Abhi's got the specifications up there.
Sorry.
I install the FM 4991 UL Qualified Contractor Program. Both those programs wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the FCIA, and frankly, we believe that this has helped change the industry from those that don't know what they're installing to those that do. The percentage of contractors that are FM approved or UL qualified that are doing work varies by type of building. Super high-rise buildings get a FCIA member, FM 4991 UL qualified contractor about 75% of the time. Hospitals also. I'm talking North American stats right this moment. Dubai stats might be pretty high too, because we do have a large percentage of, it is very high because we have a large percentage of FM and UL contractors there. The inspection though, I could say the FM and UL programs worldwide, I mean, we've got companies in South America and in Mexico that have jumped in. We have companies in Canada, Dubai, Doha, Europe. We got some people in India that are working on it. I know because they came to the FCIA symposiums in June in Dubai and took the exams. And who knows where we go next. with Abhi, we'll
Yeah.
follow you around the world.
I'm excited to share. You talked about SOM, Bill. I was lucky enough to spend some very good time with likes of SOM the week before at the Tall Building Conference in London, and I spoke with several very large project designers, architects, and contractors all over the world. Whether it's South America or Middle East, India. And a lot of them are very excited, and they have signed up already to learn more about these tools, right up to New Zealand. And I'm excited to kind of share and report that there are a large set of people who are excited to take on this learning, and many of them are now considering that how they can imbibe some of these tools that already exist. So I'll let you just talk through a little more about how the adoptions have been across the span of the DIIM bill. And I'm just going to walk through the slide. I'll let you and Rich walk through how these tools that
well, let's back up one slide very quickly, and then we'll continue on, because there's a couple of more things in here on the inspection programs. The accreditation criteria IAS AC291, that thought came up in 2006. We built the inspection standards. We tried to take them to the code. Now we need to know who are the inspection agencies that can do this work. How do we make sure they're as good as the Firestop contractor? So we worked with our friends Raj Nathan and others at Chakramani at International Accreditation Services to build the Firestop section of IAS AC291. Again, FCIA trying to improve the quality of inspection, which is odd. Most contractors are not looking for inspection. They're looking for, let me get in and get out. But this industry has really done a lot to keep its ethics as high as possible. Maintaining protection is also quick, I'll do this quickly, but also quite important, obviously. The building code, actually the fire codes, like the International Fire Code of the USA, NFPA 1, NFPA 101, all have requirements for maintaining protection of passive fire protection in existing buildings, all passive fire protection. And it's crazy when I do presentations for building owner groups like the health, not necessarily healthcare, but more in the universities and office buildings. First question I ask is, how many of you have a line item budget for operating your building for maintaining your sprinklers? All the hands go up. How about your alarm system? Hands go up. Okay, now tell me about your passive fire protection, line item budget. Silence, no hands. So that's another piece of the culture that, our future and our current, right now we're trying to change that. And that's going to be our challenge in the future, is to make sure it's maintained properly. Because this whole DIIM, if it's not done right, why should the building owner buy it in the first place? If it's not properly designed, communicated to the contractor, systems built, codes strong, standards good, installed properly, inspected to make sure it's in right, and then maintained, why bother? And that same question can be asked for any industry. The sprinkler industry has the same challenges that we do, but different technical problems. The alarm industry, same thing. So, Rich, any other comments very quickly before we move on from this?
I'll just go back in history once again and say that, the fire stopping industry learned from other industries. I was involved with sprayed fireproofing products back in the 80s also, and participated with a group from the Association of Wall and Ceilings Industry, Technical Committee 4, that dealt with sprayed fireproofing products. And one of the main focuses of that group was the inspection end of things. And yes, there was a requirement in the codes for special inspections. There were standards associated with how that was done, but there was very little consistency from one special inspection agency to the other in terms of how exactly it was done. There were a lot of issues created as a result of that for the contractors installing the products. They didn't know what level of inspection was going to be required on the project and so on. So this industry, the fire stopping industry, I think learned from the experiences of the fireproofing industry that not only do we need a standard for inspections, not only do we need code requirements requiring special inspections, but we need the accreditation component also. We need to set minimum qualifications for those agencies. So that was, to me, a very integral part of what was set up through the Firestop group.
And if you think about it, this DIIM is actually the structure needed for where some areas might not have governance, if you will, that covers the installed quality. You know, maybe there aren't any rules. This DIIM is the rules for this industry. And it's self-governance, if you will, in a big way to try to improve the installed quality so it works when it's called upon by fire. While we talk quickly about DIIM and the history and all that kind of stuff, the real objective is make sure that these products and systems work. It's our whole objective with it. We had to do a lot of work to get it together, though, in order to build the industry. The building codes, as Abhi's got here on the slide, really lay out the requirements and bring rules, if you will, regulations that are adopted by local communities or countries or emirates or provinces or states, wherever we are. You know, these codes lay out the basic requirements, whether we're in the NFPA 5000, the NFPA 101, the appendix of both of those references the FM 4991 UL Qualified Contractor Program, the appendix. That's non-mandatory, but the appendix references the contractor installation programs. It also references the ASTM E2174239 inspection standards in the appendices. NFPA 1 actually references the 21742393 standards for inspection on high-rise buildings. The International Building Code of the USA has special inspection required, the ASTM 21742393, as part of the International Building Code, where high-rise buildings 75 feet and higher above lowest fire department access, so that's about 23 meters, I think, ish, if my calculations are right, above lowest fire department access, and also for residential occupancies with more than 250 occupants. How'd all this stuff get in there? The FCIA was the code proponent, working with our code consultant, Bill Koffel, to put it into the 2012 International Building Code. I currently chair those two standards at ASTM, and on Sunday, I'll hop an airplane to fly to Orlando, Florida, and have discussions with the task group about the 21742393 standards to maintain them, to make sure that they're appropriate. You know, the approved document B in the UK also has requirements for listings. For instance, the BS 476 or the EU standards, the ISO 834, all those standards are referenced into the approved document B. A little bit different than the building code. It's more an explanatory document, if you will. But you know, it sets down some objectives, if you will, for how to keep the building safe. Abhi would probably be able to describe it better, but anyway, the National Building Code of Canada has requirements as well. It does not have the special inspection in it as a requirement like the Building Code of International Building Code does, but the specifiers have decided instead to put in their specifications requirements for the FM and UL contractors and inspection in accordance with the 21742393. We were at our symposium in Canada about a month ago and had discussions about this. The specifiers were already all over it. Why? Because I spent time at Construction Specifications Canada starting in about 2007-8, and we had discussions, industry discussions with our friends, the specifiers, to build these. And we do the same with the code officials. Have a conversation about our industry, just as we're having this conversation right now. It's the same conversation. And they have to understand, okay, this is a good thing, and they want to put it in their requirements, which that's their decision, but we're glad that they do that. The Saudi Building Code, actually the UAE Fire and Life Safety Code of Practice, first does have requirements for maintaining protection of fire stopping. And also, it's the result of, that's why we have so many FM and UL contractors there. The requirements for good contractors. The National Building Code of India, I'm just getting to know, but it has some really cool things in it, in that building code. It actually talks about the responsibility for safety of the building, the occupant having some responsibility in that charge for a safe building. I think that's really cool, because frankly, we should be teaching our second grade 2 kids, 7-year-olds, that a door should be closed to protect the compartment. They're smart. If we teach them.
I'm going to jump in because you talked about the UAE Fire Code, Saudi Building Code, and the National Building Code of India. And I'm going to kind of just very quickly come in because we talked about installation ready and compliance. And I have been very actively involved in the UAE Fire Life Safety Code, and I was in Saudi Arabia almost all of the week that has passed, or is at Intersec, and I have had very good interactions and meetings with SASO and with some of the acting ASJs and ASJs and consultants, to kind of just impress upon the fact that whether you have a prescriptive code, whether you have a building code or a guideline document followed in a given country, these are all kind of containers that provide you the basis of how things should be done. And I'm very kind of happy to report that some of the tools that the Contractor Association, which was originally just a contractor association, and now has the whole passive fire protection industry involved, because some of the tools that have been created are so implementable. You talked about the approved document B bill, talking about fire resistance. Just a couple of weeks ago, the United Kingdom has decided to shift to the EN way and remove the BS 476 for fire resistance, as well as reaction to fire tests. And the thing is, we all have these tools about compliance, and we need to adopt and use some of these mechanisms that we are talking of provided by the DIIM. We have the building codes talking about need for fire resistance, talking about which building type, which occupancy type will have how much fire resistance requirement. But the education program that we have as an association and as an industry developed is teaching you how to implement the guideline documents from building code. It's teaching you that when you do a fire resistance test and you get a product compliant, how to evaluate that compliance, how to read the drawing, how to read the compliance, and what are the areas where you need to raise a flag, call for an engineering judgment or an equivalency or any kind of documentation that can help people solve practical issues, saying, well, I don't think this system will work here, so we need to solve it. So with that, I'll kind of move one slide further ahead, keeping in mind that we have limited time, and we want to just finish off the DIIM so that we can have some time to address some questions as well.
Very good. So when you put up the slide that talked about the barriers, quite interesting. At the various conferences, Rich and I have conversations with other industries. The fire dampers, the fire doors, the fire rate glazing, and the wall assembly itself. We meet with the gypsum associations, we meet with the National Concrete Masonry Associations to make sure that they have a bit of the DIIM also. And certain industries have taken pieces of it, but the FCIA and the Firestop industry has taken it all, starting with the I install. The FM 4991 standard for the approval of Firestop contractors, the UL qualified Firestop contractor program, are very unique. There are no other programs like it in subcontracting. General contractors use it using the ISO 14001. The FM and the UL contractor programs were just that, management system-based programs to build a good company with great operations, resulting in installed fire stopping the way it was supposed to be done in the first place. So our specifiers, we recommend that you specify these contractor qualifications, because currently they're in several codes around the world, not everywhere, but it's good to have both. You know, the code requires it, make sure the specification requires it as well. The management system, to build it, FCIE has education programs that can teach you as a contractor how to build this management system program. It's not super expensive. If you think about it, the cost of the FM and UL program to get audited by FM or UL, to have a person pass the Firestop exam from UL or FM after studying the FCIE Firestop Manual of Practice, and then implement it, get audited. The cost of it's not much more than a couple of good rugby games and good dinners for a few evenings with some customers. It's not a lot of money. What it takes is some time to look at your company and make sure you're doing things the way they're supposed to be done. You want to move on to the next slide there, Abhi. So as far as inspection goes, there's a lot here. Unloading these pictures that are being unloaded right in front of you. There's inspection processes. The 2174, 2393 describe those processes. The industries, the manufacturers have said where to judge the thickness of Firestop sealants. And we do that with various documents. The FCIA has an education program about inspection. On many of our webinars, we've probably done about 8 of them. Just go to the fcia.org. As a member, you can go listen to the recording again, actually, and just go look for the ones that say inspection, and we'll describe how that inspection is to take place. Having labels on the fire stopping, as you can see in the bottom right picture, sure does make it faster to inspect these fire stop systems, because the system number gives you the recipe for how thick the material should be, what types of material should be in there, how big can the angular space size be, the breach or gap size, what kind of penetrating items, what kind of joint gap size, how many coverings on them, what type of wall or floor. All of that is described in the listing, plus the manufacturer's instructions. That's what you have to judge the fire stop on. The inspection is supposed to be simply an inspection. The inspector, that person's role is to call a goal or no goal. We got the goal, the ball went in the net, or the ball did not go in the net. That's their role. It's not their role to tell the contractor, oh, by the way, you got that wrong, and here's how you fix it. That's the job of the contractor, to fix it and make sure it's done right. Any thoughts, Rich, on those 2 slides very quickly?
No, I'll pass on that right now.
Okay. Abhi, next slide there. All right, maintaining protection. This one's big. I can tell you, Rich did a ton of work on this section. The International Fire Code 2018, up there in the upper right. Rich was on a committee. He actually chaired the committee to break out passive fire protection into all sections, separate sections for each passive fire protection. Prior to the 2018 version of that code, it was 1 paragraph with all of it mixed in. And what Rich did with his task group was build this. So go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I was going to say the existing language in the code at that time was very disjointed. So I was asked to chair a task group to rewrite Chapter 7, covering fire and smoke protection features of the International Fire Code, published by the International Code Council, or ICC. So we did that. As Bill said, we took a very disjointed section and broke it into individual components, each of which covered some aspect of fire resistive construction. We had a section on basic fire resistance, ASME 119, the walls and horizontal assemblies. We created a section for fire stopping, another one for joint systems, another for opening protectives, in other words, fire door assemblies. And then the last, we created a section for fire and smoke dampers. So each section then contained the requirements for maintaining the performance of those items over the life of the building. And probably the most important feature of that chapter of the code, it calls for annual inspections by the building owner or their representative that forces the owner to make a review, do a review, typically hiring somebody, and then that the results of that review or inspection of the building is turned over to the fire officials, who in turn have the enforcement power to make sure things are repaired if need be. So we now have a very well defined maintenance process in the International Fire Code, and likewise some of the other codes from NFPA and Life Safety Code 101.
And what's interesting is there's commentary that goes with this that gives the code official, the fire marshal, the ability to some explanatory material. Here's what to look for. And that's part of our industry's responsibility, is to teach the fire official what to look for about each industry, whether it's a joint, void, a penetration, the labeling on the fire-rated glazing, the labeling on the ducts, the fire dampers, the spray fire-resistant material thicknesses, making sure that it's all appropriate. That's all in the guide information. And what's interesting is, as you go around the world, the language is very similar. The charging language to maintain protection is very similar. Certain codes go further than others. The International Firestop or Fire Code talks about maintaining protection by annual visual inspection and repairing immediately. NFPA 1, every 3 years in high-rise buildings, but still properly repair, restore, or replace where damaged, which means immediately. Pretty crazy stuff. Any further comments there, Abby?
Yeah, sure. I just kind of wanted to come in and, first of all, thank you for, kind of giving a very nice, insightful overview of, how the DIIM has been evolving. And, it's nearly impossible, not nearly, it is impossible to cover, all that has been done, let's say, over the last 25 years, as well as to be able to give a kind of full overview of how some of the tools that we worked on, we evolved on, have been adopted over a period of time. But I think what is very exciting for us as an industry is that, SCIA, us as a group, we have been able to bring all of these tools to a stage and to a phase where we have these tools that are kind of straight away adoptable. And this is exactly what's kind of showcased by how in the Gulf countries and in several other jurisdictions, which may not come from the American building codes, have been able to just take these tools straight away and adopt them to regularize their processes. So it, of course, on one side, it is very, very insightful for the whole audience to kind of listen into the journey of how it evolved, but also to see, listen in, and visualize how powerful some of these systems are. And I just have a quick slide in a way to talk about how, a lot of these tools have adoptability when we are looking at assuring passive fire protection in general. So right from the time when whatever containment is needed is designed by the fire and life safety plan, whether it is a prescriptive code or it is a code that allows you the flexibility to design as per the requirements that are unique to the occupancy type. But drawing from this and right till the maintenance stage, we go through these phases. We need standards. These standards could be American standards, these could be European standards, British standards, Indian standards, which is what we talk about, saying whatever has been designed as per a building code should be validated for compliance of products, materials, systems. You could choose a standard that functions in your jurisdiction, but the message is compliance and check for the compliance. Of course, the systems stemming from United States, which, as I tell to all my friends, it's a potentially litigative market as compared to so many other markets in the world. And hence, the systems are as black and white as it can be, saying, do you have conformity assured through a listing, which a contractor can see, a designer can see, an architect can see that what functions, what doesn't function, and there is a third-party certification body who is behind ensuring that these products, if they are installed in a given way, they will always perform in a given way in the test. And there are several conformity bodies who offer these listings, whether it's the American certification bodies like UL, Intertek, FM, and several other from the United States who offer listings, or the European or British certification bodies, certified program from Fire. My previous employer, Thomas Wright, they have a listing program. There are listing programs that are in India. There are standards in India that help test fire stopping material now. There are Indian standards, but as long as this framework exists, that you have a standard which can be used for assurance. You have a conformity assessment scheme of a contractor, that they have this knowledge. They have the ability to understand what is written from the building codes, from the design requirements, and compare that with what works as per the assured conformity assessment documents. And then you have the systems which are run by UL, by FM, that they will qualify a contractor, they will certify a contractor, and that provides the assurance to the designer, that provides the assurance to the building owner, that provides the assurance to the maintenance company, that if they have the telecom company come in and punch a hole, they can call a qualified contractor who will re-rate the compartment that we imagined about an hour ago when I started the discussion, and I said, look around. Are these compartments able to contain the fire? Yes. And for anyone breaking these compartments, we have to make sure that these compartments still work. So I'm very pleased that we have been able to arrive at such a good system, such a good process that is already in place, and it is now being adopted in many parts of the world. So that's kind of my last slide. I'll jump to some question and answers, but if Bill wants to come back, or Rich, you would like to add some things, please do so.
I think it's a great summary here. It's pretty amazing how the SCIA Firestop Manual of Practice started as a very North American centric, but in 2018, Rich and I and one of his ex-colleagues developed a chapter on the Manual of Practice that covers standards and codes worldwide. So that chapter went from about, 15 pages to about 180 pages by the time we were all said and done, describing the various standards for fire resistance around the world. So, Abhi, when you made the point that it's standards agnostic, while the current exam does cover the ASTM and UL standards and ULC standards, in the future we'll be doing some further questions on those other standards, the ISO 834 and others. And we've been trying to take this story, DIIM story, to other countries or other industries, I should say, so that all passive fire protection gets this, not just our Firestop industry. There just were some questions that came in, Abhi. You want me to start covering them?
Sure. Please go ahead, Bill. I want to pick up a question which somewhere in the list of questions there is someone who wants kind of a comparison between ASTM E814 and the BS476, and this
Okay.
is a very typical. I call it a curveball question. This is a difficult question for the panel to answer usually. And hence I thought, let me pick up the most difficult one and kind of share my perspective, having worked for fire testing labs who have been offering services across regions and across test standards. And the question gets complicated from a user point of view and a usability point of view. So I want to just set to perspective three separate things in order to answer this question. And the first, which is the most critical one, is that whenever a conformity to a standard is asked for in a contract, in a project, in a given location, whether it's E814 or the British standards or the European or any other norm, we have to understand, is there a cohesive approach? Has the building been designed as per American codes, which means a code that looks at active, passive, egress, design, all those matters in unison? Because if it is doing so, then it is factoring in to the specifics and the deviations of why an American test method like an E814 is uniquely different in the way it measures and captures almost the same intent that any other fire resistance test method, whether it's British or ISO or Indian or European, would do, which is to assess whether the containment works or not. So it's very difficult, almost impossible sometimes, to give a comparative report as if a test result to an E118, 814 is same as the test result that would come out of a different test method, because the two test methods are different. They have different mechanisms, they have different sometimes thermocouples, placement of thermocouples, slight deviation in the time temperature curve and what they see. So it's impossible to say, will a European, British, ISO, Indian, Australian, GB standard fit directly into the whole fire and life safety plan that may have been designed as per an American code, or designed as per a Saudi code, or as per an EN code. So the test standards, they are comparable 100% in intent, but it always requires a specialist to assess building specific conformity requirements, building specific design requirements, to be able to give a green light, take on the responsibility, take on the liability. Yes, this works. So I hope that the question was answered. I would let maybe Rich can add to what I said.
Yeah, let me expand on that a little bit from the U.S. perspective. And here in the U.S., typically the code officials do not accept fire testing data from standards from other parts of the world. Why not? Well, primarily the reason is they are not familiar with the nuances of those other standards versus the standards spelled out by the U.S.-based building code. Now, Abhi, Bill, and I, we can discuss in detail what are the differences between ASTM E814 and some of the other international standards, and go point by point and discuss what are the differences. But a code official is really not in a position to be able to do that. They may not even have access to those standards. So typically the international standards are not accepted here in the US, but it's also the bigger question, as Abhi was bringing up too, what's the overall life safety plan? What's the philosophy of the US based codes versus the codes in the UK, France, Germany, wherever? And there's some differences. different interactions between the active and passive fire protection. So it's not a simple concept of simply saying, oh yeah, we can accept, you know, in your part of the world, Abby, those folks to say we can accept a US based standard or a German standard, whatever the case may be, ISO standard. So it's a very complex issue that needs to be looked at very holistic.
But I'm actually very happy on the fact that, and I'm kind of very open. I am now very recently behind the role and function of energizing the association's mission as FCIA, and I'm actually very excited about the possibilities. Coming from a world where North American standards and approach is also used along with some of the approaches in Europe, some of the approaches in other parts of the world. And I see that the tools that we have created provide any stakeholder, whether it's an AHJ or a tier 1 contractor or a general contractor or the building owner, the right tools, the right language so that they can be assured much more. I want to pick up a part of a question from the UK where one of my good friends is, I'm going to read out the question saying, some of the tier 1 main contractors here in the UK are using third-party certificated installers, third-party products, and third-party inspection on top of that, and to make sure that it's done correctly the first time so that they don't have legacy issues to remediate in the future, which are lessons learned by recent tragedies. And the question got to do with, should AHJs make more of that norm across all jurisdictions? Then yes, the answer is yes. But I want to touch upon 2 points from that question. Is that I feel that the construction industry stakeholders have much more a responsibility and liability themselves. A building owner is building or is developing a piece of infrastructure that will last for 100 years. It's designed to last for 100 years. And I always draw from the example is that this business, this entity, may last for much longer than the government will last in a given country. And I don't mean to say that in any negative way. It's more about the longevity of an idea, the longevity of, if we are asking the AHJ or the law to protect the interest of an investment done by a building owner, of an investment in a brand of a contracting company, an investment in the life of the building, which is insured by an insurance company. The insurance company is putting their money saying, I'm asking this much money so that in return, if anything happens, I will pay back this much money. So the assurance is needed by the other stakeholders of the industry. And I think some of the tools like the availability of the manual of practice, which teaches these basic connected constructs, is a great tool that can be adopted anywhere. It is in the interest of the building owner to say, we need a credentialed installer. We need to make sure a compliant system exists that can be installed. Any other question that, Bill, you would like to pick up that you find worth addressing?
Yeah, there's a
Rich,
question.
maybe?
Yeah, here's a question that says, how are FCIA and other associations working with universities, colleges, regulator bodies, regulation bodies to spread the word on new construction and existing buildings? Not next week, but the week after, I fly to Kansas City, USA to speak at the Construction Specifications Institute 2024 conference. My topic, fire resistance, fire stopping in all types of buildings, including universities, and maintaining protection, and how the specifier can communicate through Division 1, the requirement to gather the inventory for maintaining protection, which starts the process. In 3 weeks, Rich and I are in Long Beach, California, educating the code officials. Earlier in September, we had a Canadian symposium. Specifiers were there, code officials were there from Alberta, the center of, kind of the center, a little west center of Canada. And I'll be invited to speak in another place. We've spoken to the Association of Physical Plant Administrators, which is the worldwide association of university facility directors. We've spoken at the American Society for Healthcare Engineering and the Canadian Society for Healthcare Engineering. I think you're doing some work also, Abhi, with other organizations in healthcare too. I can tell you that for the last 30 years, Rich and I have been speaking all over the place about fire resistance, and Abhi's taking our story and running with it, but lots of places.
I can really add to this question because, and I'm excited to answer this question because, between the three of us and, all the other members of the association who are volunteering their time for this cause, which I will call upon everybody to do so. I am working on, a handful of projects. Very soon we will, in fact, tomorrow I'm speaking at a webinar in the morning in India, specific to the learnings from international accidents and how conformity assessment can be correctly implemented specifically to fire safety. We are planning to do with a very large healthcare association in India, doing a series of dedicated workshops on how hospitals in India need to improve or can improve. What are the gaps that they can fill in? I am interacting with a couple of hospitality groups, hospitality associations, and we are, pipelining some of the education in both hospitality as well as healthcare. The fact that refurbishment and taking care of existing property, existing infrastructure, specific to fire stopping, specific to all passive fire protection, which undergoes wear and tear, it has their life cycles, how it can be maintained. And there is a lot of work that is happening across several countries. So all of us, we are very, very excited and kicked up about the fact that we have been able to transmit, and we will be transmitting this global language of passive fire protection. Some of you are probably aware, but this is just the first part of the series of webinars. Next month, we have fire consultants from the UK, from the Middle East, and from India, who will be in a panel discussion talking about how fire stopping, passive fire protection is designed currently in UK and Europe, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia and India, and how this compares with some of the tools that are directly adoptable, so that the listeners as well as the people in the industry can start adopting change tomorrow morning. This is something that you can do now, saying, oh, I've learned this. This is something that is completely implementable from tomorrow morning. So yes, the list of activities and work is very, very long, and we would call upon you to join us as an association if you're not, and please get your hand out and let's do this together.
Absolutely, Abhi. Absolutely. If you're a member, a big thank you because your dues, dollars that you pay, like whether it's reals or rupees or dirhams, pay for us to do what we do, and we can't change the industry without you. So a big thank you to those that are members. Those that are not members, Abhi's already reaching into your wallet to grab that credit card and have you join. Just fcia.org, download the membership application, off you go. What I think is cool is Abhi just mentioned some of the work he's doing in the Middle East and Europe, UK, India. The conversations he's having affect other parts of the world too. Those hospitality organizations are worldwide, and so is the Council on Tall Building is an urban habitat where he spoke. That's a worldwide group. and it's really cool to see the results that he's had with us in such a short time. So a big thank you, Abhi. Other questions? Rich, you got some thoughts there? Looking at any of these?
I'm not sure if you.
What's that, Abhi? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just turned off the webcams. I thought that there was kind of an interference between, I just want to, we are running late, but I wanted to just touch upon one of the questions which has been asked, saying in GCC, there is no separate installation contractors when it comes to fire door industry. The fabricators use their own carpenters and do installation work who generally are not well trained in ensuring fire stopping or pacifier is done correctly, leading to, of course, disasters. How well the program is designed to certify these individuals. And this is something that I just want to touch upon, and thanks for bringing that question up. And this is something that is a kind of next thing that right now FCIA have a membership category open for fire door installers. And we are welcoming installation companies and fire door installers to join us as members, because we already have a great base, a manual of practice, and a system in place that can be replicated by rolling out contractor qualification programs that can be directly asked in by specifiers, by governments, by everybody who wants to make sure that we have harmony and we have limitation of liability. So anyone who knows any fire door installer who want to showcase that they do their job well, they're welcome to join us as members. And I'm going to launch the last kind of small poll. Or did I? No, I don't think I can launch this poll anymore. We've probably crossed the time. So any last thoughts, Bill, before we close off? We've gone beyond the time.
Yeah, we went beyond the time, but we finished up our technical material, your presentation, pretty much on time. And whenever Rich and I do these programs, we let the questions go as long as they keep coming. And our audience has stayed with us, and that's really nice to see. And if they have further questions, fine. I see one that came up about insurance companies. Are they involved in passive fire protection? I know you have some friends in the Middle East that have said yes, and I can tell you the FM approvals people, FM Global, because of the maximum fire loss wall, they keep an eye on that passive fire protection to make sure that things don't happen. Same thing with fire separations, fire barriers, whatever you want to call them around the world, fire compartments. They keep an eye on it. Some insurance companies are stronger on it than others.
I mean, I can just add to this. Specifically, we had some excellent speakers in our Middle East symposiums done earlier this year, talking about how some of the internal rules and methods by which insurance companies assess passive fire protection was very insightful. And I mean, the answer is a straight green light that almost all large insurance companies in the world have one or more than one internal regimes and methods to assess the functioning of passive fire protection. And we are very, very hopeful to have more and more insurance companies join hands. And it's very, very likely that in the coming months, in the coming years, some of the programs that we're working on might just get directly adopted by some of the insurance companies.
Sure. There's one question that came in here, Abhi, that talks about responsibility, if you will. What's the role of the association if the country fails in governance and there are widespread non-compliances? I'll tell you, that's why we developed the UL Qualified Contractor Program and the FM 4991. They are the adjudicators, if you will. If there's issues, they are responsible for making sure that the contractor, if it's reported to UL and FM, they'll investigate to make sure that they're continuing. The second thing is the special inspection concept is there as a check on the management system of the contractor. If the contractor has no management system, the inspection agency is going to find the non-compliances. If they're qualified and they know what they're doing, if the inspection agency inspectors who are employed by the inspection agency, if they know what they're doing, they're competent, they will self-police the contractor to make sure it's done right. If neither of those are working, that's a problem. That's where the authority having jurisdiction really needs to come in. In the International Building Code of the USA, the code official is supposed to approve the inspection agency and the individual inspectors. So there's some pretty strong rules, as Abhi had pointed out, because of our way our governance is laid out, and because we've got too many lawyers here in the USA that will start lawsuits. Good question, though. Thanks for asking that. Any other?
I mean,
I'll
add a little bit to that, Bill. I'll just add a little bit to that because, it's important to know, because not a lot of people worldwide understand that when a certification body gives a public assurance of anything, whether they are saying that we certify that as long as this material is carrying my certification mark, is installed in the way I have written on my certification directory, I am taking part liability and responsibility that it will perform the way we have said, as long as it is installed within the delimitations of how we said it is going to be installed. So I'm saying that with all the riders. And exactly in the same way, it is not us as a not-for-profit association who is giving a assurance that a given contractor will do its job. It is an independent third-party conformity assessment body who is in the business of assuring the workmanship of a contractor. There are two companies who run these programs. They are accredited. They are audited for enabling them to audit the contractor. So it's quite a well-formed loop, and they have a publicly listed directory where they say, if a contractor we have certified, then they will perform within these committed boundaries. And it is completely an open thing, because a lot of large conformity bodies, they are in the business of trust. So they have to be trustworthy. And it is completely in the hands of the industry. Anybody who wants to be what is called a whistleblower should be a whistleblower. If you see something that's going wrong, you have to report to the authorities, and your job is done. I was in the UK and they said, see it, something, they have a phrase in the tube, see it, say it, and it's done. Then it's the government's responsibility to take care of it. So yeah, I think we kind of seem to have addressed almost all the questions.
Yeah. I'll just make another point here too, is that the DIIM philosophy it's a very comprehensive approach, and as Bill mentioned before, the whole concept is self-policing. If the designer doesn't do their job, that's going to be noticed by the contractor and it'll be resolved before installation. If the contractor doesn't do his job properly, that's going to be picked up as part of the inspection phase, and ultimately The inspection reports, if there's special inspections in place, are going to be provided to the code official, who has the last say in terms of reviewing the results of the inspections and ultimately approving the project or not approving the project if the special inspector is not doing his job properly, or if the the AHJ himself is doing the inspection. Again, he'll see if there's any issues with the installation. So it is very much a self-policing process that's been set up through the DIIM concept.
Mhm. Agreed. Well said, Rich.
So I kind of, as we come to an end to this session, I would like to thank all the audience who logged in, who stayed in with us. And I want to leave the audience with the calendar of the next set of events which are lined up in the series you've registered for. And I want to thank the panels, Rich, Will, Bill, for being able to join very early morning. I think the sun might be rising now, but thank you so very much for waking up early morning, almost on my request, because I was the one who said you always do all the events in 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. and it's so late for all of us. So thanks so much for adjusting and helping all the people listen in to the great work that you have been driving for quarter of a century. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the opportunity to work with you, Abhi, and really nice work assembling this program for the rest of the world. And if we have to get up early, that's okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will be closing the webinar now. Thank you and a goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. I can end it for you there, Abhi. I'll push the button.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.